What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you to the very late November 2023 edition of Let's Talk. I do apologize for putting this video out so late, but as the month wore on and a whole myriad of things happened, and I actually got injured and have been treating that for the past few weeks, it just kind of made this Let's Talk fall a little bit later into the schedule. Not to mention the fact that you guys probably aren't going to be getting a December update, so this kind of doubles as that as well. This will be the last one of the year, I promise. And I have quite a few things to go over, but this also shouldn't be too long of a Let's Talk because I'm pretty set in stone and have everything that I want to talk about squared away. But just to go over everything that happened over this past month so you can understand, and also so maybe you can learn from my mistakes that I apparently keep making. I just find new ways to make my life harder for myself when I'm trying to make stuff on this channel. I really don't mean to, but sometimes, you know, I just space out and I make stupid mistakes. Here's the mistake that I made this time. When you're using a capture card, they are generally USB 3.0 if they're USB based at all. If they're not meant to, you know, you're not supposed to actually attach them directly to your motherboard. You typically use them through a USB 3.0 port. But that's not necessarily enough because, and trust me, I already knew this part. It was just me not thinking about this when I made the mistake. But use a USB 3.0 port, but that's not enough because that port needs power, and that port is very likely surrounded by other ports. And if you have all of those ports active at the same time, the power drain is real. You're going to notice that there is not a very nice even distribution of power, and if that capture card is not getting enough power, it's not doing its job properly. Me, being the smart person that I am, decided I'm going to sit down and record an entire game in a single 6-hour sitting. Very difficult to do, not good on your voice, wouldn't recommend it, by the way. I decided that was a good idea that day, and I think it was just because I had so much energy going in, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do this. Let's just get this done. I recorded the entire 6-hour session, got it all done. The capture utility said, yep, this was 6 hours, or it was like 6 hours and 10 minutes, and stopped the recording, started working on all my audio and all that sort of stuff, and then I threw it into my editor, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to edit the whole thing tonight. And I threw it in my editor, and the video file came out, and it was like, no, this is only 4 hours and 50 minutes. What are you talking about, 6 hours? You didn't record for that long. I look over at my clock and, you know, just to verify that my eyes aren't deceiving me. And sure enough, yeah, it was, you know, I started that recording like 7+ hours ago. It definitely should have been that long, but no, my editing software said otherwise. And then I started to go through the editing software and noticed that there were just large chunks that were just gone, completely cut. Like, not even like grainy or corrupted in some way. Like, they were just gone. It would just like skip. Like 30 minutes of footage was just taken out entirely. And so all of it became unusable, and I was screwed. And have now since had to re-record that entire series, although the second time around I did not try to do that in one sitting, which was much better for my health. But yeah, so that happened, and that was interesting to deal with. Don't do that. Make sure that you, when you have a capture card plugged in, don't, you know, later not think about it and then plug 2 hard drives into the next to it and then wonder why the capture card is suddenly on the fritz, which is exactly what I did, and that was very stupid on my part. But on top of that, I also, at work, herniated a disc, and that is now sitting on top of my sciatic nerve, which is causing pain to shoot from my lower left back down to my left knee. Don't get old. Wouldn't recommend it. It's not fun. Been having to nurse that, and unfortunately, sitting down and recording a Let's Play does not count as rest. Because while yes, I am just simply sitting, I am not resting, and it is certainly not helping that one part of my back, and I can't do both at the same time. So that's also been fun to deal with for this past, I mean, that's only been for the past about week and a half, but I'm still dealing with it at the moment. So whatever, what are you going to do? It's been a fun month. It's been a really fun month, but it's not like I'm falling behind or floundering or anything. I've just run into snags, and they happen, and that's just the nature of doing this whole thing. We're going pretty strong so far. Just to start from the top with everything that's going on, I might as well go over the current series. Y'all know that Pokemon White just ended on the 20th. It's going to be replaced by PokePark 2. Actually, tomorrow, the day that you guys are getting this video, on the 23rd, will be the first episode of PokePark 2. That ended up being a longer series than I anticipated, however. Like, I was thinking it would be generally the same length as PokePark 1, but the sequel's actually got quite a bit more going on with it. in terms of the story. Like, I know I kind of just neglected the end game of PokePark 1 in the end, but when I was looking into it, there wasn't a whole lot that I was missing. 2 is a different beast. Like, it's still not a super long game, but it has a lot more going on once the credits roll than the first game does. And, and that stuff is actually integral to the game's story, and because of that, it feels wrong to just call that game quits once the credits hit, because there's a lot of unanswered questions, even if it's like, not something you're super interested in, because yeah, it's a kid's game, but it's still like, you want to see it through, and I want to see it through. I don't want to, that feels like an incomplete series if I call it there. So it ended up being about a dozen or so episodes longer than the first PokePark. And so once that's finished, then we'll head back to Pokemon White and look at its endgame. But I wanted to give Pokemon White a little bit of a break, just because, it's been going for the past 6-7 months, very, very strong, and want to mix things up while also keeping my promise of actually making PokePark 2 happen this year. Horizon Forbidden West, that ends on the 29th. Y'all already knew this. December 3rd is the start of Destiny 2. That's going to be replacing Horizon Forbidden West. We'll talk a lot more about Destiny 2 towards the back half of this video, of this update. Pikmin and Shadow of the Tomb Raider already have their set end dates. Pikmin ends on January 6th, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider ends just a few days later on January 9th. Pikmin is going to be replaced on Saturdays by Mario Party 2, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider is going to be replaced by actually that game that I recorded in a single 6-hour sitting, and that was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Since Mario Kart 8's, all of the booster packs are out, all of the content has been dropped, it has finally reached end of life after so many years, I decided now is as good time as any to get around to recording that game all the way through, trying to get back to actually recording all the Mario Karts. I've looked at the Game Boy Advance version, the GameCube version, and the Wii version, and the Wii U version, all on this channel up to this point, and want to get around to recording the rest of the games in the series, so I felt like 8 Deluxe was a good springboard back into that mission, into that goal, so we can look at the DS one, the 3DS one, the SNES one, and even the N64 one. So that pretty much covers everything now and everything you can look forward to in the future as far as the 4 upload slots are concerned for playthrough series, Let's Plays, and all that sort of stuff. Let's talk about variety for a moment. So variety content, I know the past few months I've been looking at a lot of recent, more modern games, a lot of indie games, not all of which were gems, but games that I had heard through the grapevine might be good for one reason or another. I was legitimately trying to look for genre variety this time around and just take a look at stuff that was eye-popping, eye-catching, but wasn't necessarily well-known. And, this resulted in games like Cloudpunk and Jet the Far Shore and A Short Hike. That game in particular was just a wonderful revelation, one of the best under 3-hour games I've ever played in my life, because, if you've seen that video, you know how much I liked it. I ended up turning that single video into, the whole playthrough of the game. I didn't 100% the game, but I looked at probably about 70-80% of everything in the game in just that video. So, absolutely loved it. That was delightful. And that's kind of, the driving force behind what I was trying to look at. But also got back to Collector's Corner. We're going to be obviously doing those for quite a long while. They'll be sprinkled in here and there for the next probably year and a half. We got so many games in that series to look at. We're really just getting started as far as that is concerned. But as far as everything else goes, I've been really bad lately with variety, where when it comes to, the variety of the variety. And I want to switch things up a bit more. Games I remember and the I've Always Wanted to Try series, I've been really neglecting these past several months and want to get back into more of those. I've made these huge lists of games that I'm going to look at in either category, and we'll start throwing those in there here relatively soon. You guys should be seeing more recognizable games in the mix, and not just recognizable based on cult status, but actually popular games, or games that people consider to be generally just phenomenal. Good example, actually, of one that I'm going to be recording here very soon is a game that I've never played before, but I have always heard it is one of the best games of the last 10 years, and that is Disco Elysium. Never played it, but want to give it a shot, and again, those videos tend to be a good starting point to making a bigger playthrough out of it. And there's already a lot of variety content that I would like to extend into bigger playthroughs. Right now, my top games are The Messenger, Returnal, and Chibi Robo at the moment. And there's actually a fourth one that I won't spoil that's coming out here in December. So games, I want to get back to looking at these and maybe doing a full playthrough of each one at some point. And Variety obviously gives me the ability to do so. But I also said a few months back that I don't want to make a habit or a point of doing that too often. And that is true. The one problem with Variety is that when I look at a game and then when that video comes out, there's a gap, a pretty big, substantial gap between those. The Messenger was almost immediate, and Returnal, for the most part, was as well. But, like, that episode of Chibi Robo I recorded that, like, 2.5 months before it actually came out. And I get that feedback really late, and by that point, I've already put a whole lot of other things into motion. And even if I wanted to just, like, right this second, I want to start a Chibi Robo playthrough, that's going to take a while for that to come to fruition. Like, you guys wouldn't see episode 2 based on the current upload schedule probably for 5-6 months now. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like I can't say with any immediacy, all right, we're jumping into it now. It's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, it's added to the list, but when it happens, I honestly can't tell you. In fact, a very good example of that, the very first game, or one of the very first games I ever looked at in the Variety series 2 years ago, was Sable. And I do want to get back to that game. In fact, I have already recorded future episodes of that game so that we can end up seeing that one through. And you know what? Probably not going to be happening for a very long time. And that's just because, again, it's all about where the chips fall. I just kind of have to maneuver things around and try to make it work in a way that it makes sense, while at the same time giving time to games that matter more. And as much as I like Sable, and as much as good of a game as I think it is and the impression that it left on me, I've got games that are a way higher priority at the moment, and I need to get through all of those first before I move on to the next ones. And it's just... It's kind of why I'm sort of, for at least a little while, against the idea of making Variety videos into longer series, but I also can't entirely avoid that because, man, sometimes you just come across a game and you want to see it through all the way. And I have talked at length how this channel is my outlet for that, because if I want to play a game on my own time, there's even less likelihood that I'll ever get around to actually finishing it. So, let's just talk about December in general and what my plans are for that month and all the things that I'm going to be working on during December so you guys can expect more things in the future. First of those is, well, The Messenger, actually, which I just mentioned a minute ago. I do want to get around to finishing out that game, and I'm going to get the entire thing recorded in the coming month. I'm doing so not because I necessarily think The Messenger itself is some phenomenal game, at least not yet. It's a really fun game. It's a good game, but my main motivation for this, my main motivation for getting a Messenger playthrough done is not because of The Messenger, but because of a game that I've talked about a few times already, and that is Sea of Stars, which is technically a prequel to The Messenger, but is the second game made by that same studio. For those who don't know, and we probably don't because I don't talk about it that much, but I have now since finished Sea of Stars, and I can say with absolute confidence that Sea of Stars is my favorite game of the year. Yes, in the same year that we've gotten the Resident Evil 4 remake, and we've gotten Baldur's Gate 3 and Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Sea of Stars is, at least right now, my game of the year. And I have loved everything about it. There's not a snowflake's chance in hell I'm not going to cover it at some point. And I just feel like it makes the most sense, especially since it's semi-fresh, to get into The Messenger so that we can then move on into Sea of Stars. Now, The Messenger itself isn't going to be starting for a few more months yet, but I am hoping to get it recorded this month. I also obviously need to work on Pokemon White endgame stuff. I'll try to get all that recorded this month as well so that we can prepare for that once Pokepart 2 is done. I'm going to obviously sprinkle some variety in the middle of things. We already went over that. Three other things that are sort of incidental that I also want to talk about before I talk about the big one of the month. First of all, I want to make 2023 and year-end video, much like I did with last year, where I go over what I think were the best games that I covered on the channel over this past year. Should be relatively brief. I'm actually going to try to also fit in like a small game of the year list in that video as well. Like I'm talking like games that came out in 2023. A little list of those that I thought were the best throughout this year. The answers, besides Sea of Stars, might surprise you. But want to go over a couple of those as well, and then I also need to put together the 2024 preview video, which will hopefully be a lot more accurate than last preview video was. I got a little bit too ambitious with my goals in that video and ended up missing out on like 4 or 5 of the series that I showcased in that preview. This time that shouldn't happen. I'm going to temper my expectations a little bit more, show a little bit less, but still give you guys an idea of what you're going to see in the coming year. You already know about some of it, but there's also probably a lot that you guys don't know about that are going to be coming next year. But probably the thing that's going to be the most time consuming actually is going to be a little bit of house cleaning around the channel, if that makes sense. As far as branding goes, I still don't have really anything in place for that yet. I'm probably going to change the channel banner, even though that's a very inconsequential thing because not a lot of people see that in the first place. I'm just going to tidy that up a little bit more, make it a more omnipresent, just constantly applicable and reliable channel banner that just sort of fits the theme and the motif a bit better and isn't more like it isn't outdated at any point, if that makes sense. Going to try to do something with that. And then I do need to change the icon, but I'm still working on that. 1, working on funds. 2, working on, trying to get a commission together. I know exactly what I want, but it's going to take me some time to do it. But I very much want to get the icon changed after all these years into something that I feel fits the mood and theme of what I do around here a bit better, while still kind of, keeping the same idea. The whole Squirtle thing I still think is, it's what the channel is known for. I can't get away from it at this point. I've talked about many times about how I kind of regret the channel name. It's something that I made when I was 17, and all these years later, it's like, man, it sounds like such an early 2010s YouTube channel name. But I've had it for so long. At this point, I'm ride or die, and want to make it actually look a little bit better. And I have a great idea. I just need to put it all together. But that's not the main thing I mean when I'm talking about house cleaning. What I mean more so is the organization around the channel. All of just the presentation and the way it looks when you go into the About pages, making sure that I have reliable links. But on top of everything else, I want to fix all of the playlists that I've put together on the channel, all of the different playthrough playlists, the numbering order, because for a while there I was trying to order every Let's Play in chronological order, while also in the descriptions putting the dates to which those Let's Plays aired. And that's just not something that's super feasible for me to do anymore. I'm going to try to fix all that up. I also don't want to try to separate the Let's Plays and the non-Let's Plays too much. I'm just going to try to group it all together in a way that makes a lot more sense, and while also fixing and cutting out a lot of series that I've ended up having to delete for one reason or another, looking at things like Dishonored, Dust and Elysian Tale, God of War, games that I didn't all the way finish. And just most of that stuff is already unlisted, but when it comes to the organization of it all, it's still kind of a mess. So I'm going to be spending the next month fixing that up for the most part, so that everything looks a bit better here on the channel, and it's something that I can keep up with from here on out, instead of just being like, well, it's a lost cause until I spend several hours going about fixing it all, which is what I'm planning on doing. But the last thing that I'm going to be starting this month and working on for the subsequent several months is finally getting around to recording Animal Crossing, which was supposed to start this year. It didn't happen, and I can already confidently say that you guys won't see the first episode of that series until May. But what I can say, finally, and reveal, is that I know which Animal Crossing game it's going to be. And it was the one that I had kind of been leaning on the entire time, but still wasn't 100% sure how I wanted to tackle this series. It's going to be Animal Crossing New Horizons, which it's the biggest, it's the most robust. There's so much going on in that game that it will be more than long enough of a series. But the problem is that it's not going in the main upload slot where Destiny is, because that game's even bigger. Animal Crossing is going to only be going up once a week, and if I want to be able to justify that, I need to make sure that those episodes are kind of chunky. I need to make sure that there's a lot going on week over week within those episodes. Many times, if you've ever seen an Animal Crossing playthrough, especially a Let's Play, almost always somebody tries to go the whole, oh man, we're going to upload an episode per day, and that episode will represent that day, and we don't even episodically number them. We just say this is Animal Crossing Day 2, or this is the quote-unquote February 7th episode, and then the February 8th episode, and we're going to make one episode for every day of the year, and I can't keep up with that stuff. I just can't do it. My brain doesn't work that way. I am not able to keep up. In fact, I've already tried twice, if you didn't know. I think I have one playthrough that's unlisted and one that's still currently public, but I'm probably going to make it unlisted, of playthroughs of Animal Crossing Population Growing for the GameCube. The original one was an attempt at making daily uploads. I think I made it like 2 weeks and then I quit. And then I tried to go the Let's Play format a bit more, and while still making them episodic, I tried to make each episode its own day, if that makes sense, and that didn't work either. It lasted a bit longer, but it wasn't by much. I think I've only made it like 20-something episodes with that one, and then abandoned it. So those were 2 failures that showed me how not to do an Animal Crossing Let's Play within my own constraints. So this time around, I'm going to be doing something very different, where I make each episode kind of an event, kind of an experience, where you get to basically see not necessarily a whole week's worth of stuff, but a lot's going to be going on within those episodes that's going to make them far more robust, and we're going to get the full Animal Crossing experience to a much greater degree, and trying not to make those episodes too tedious. Episodes are probably going to be a lot longer, probably closer to 45 minutes to an hour per each one, but I want them to be more... I want a flow to the game. I want it to make... While not necessarily showing absolutely everything that I do want to, at the very least, make give a natural sense of progression episode to episode to episode as we slowly grow our island and experience all of what New Horizons has to offer. I was originally thinking about going with City Folk, just because that is a more underrepresented Animal Crossing game. That was my main reason for picking that game. But I feel like New Horizons is going to allow me to feel this out a lot better. But someday, eventually, I do want to cover pretty much every other game in the series. I think the only one that I don't have a lot of experience with is New Leaf, but even that one, at some point, I would like to get around to recording. And New Horizons is going to be a good way of starting with that, in my opinion, just because it is the most challenging game and is going to be the longest game. And if I can get through that one, I can certainly get through the others. So that is going to start here in December, and I will be working on that for many months ahead, because honestly, the big Let's Play of the year, Destiny, I don't have much that I actually need to do this year, so that'll give me a lot more time to focus on Animal Crossing. And that leads me into the last topic of this update video, and that is, of course, Destiny, because we've got quite a bit to talk about with this game. Now, that said, I am going to be putting out another video that's going to pretty much say all the same things that I'm saying here, so if you just want to wait for that on the 3rd, you are more than welcome to. That's just going to be a bit more of a formal introduction or reintroduction to the Destiny Let's Play, but I'm going to give a little bit more history, a little bit more backstory this time around to just kind of help you understand how this is going to work, because it is a bit complicated. This is the return of a Let's Play that has been dormant for almost 5 years, of a game that has evolved considerably since then and has actually even lost most of the content that I had covered in that original Let's Play. And most of that stuff is no longer accessible. I tried to record most of that stuff in a timely manner, with maybe like a year's hindsight tops, but not anything that is now made it so old that we are looking at it 4 or 5 years into the future, if not more. So there's quite a bit to discuss with this game, just so that you can understand where I'm coming from and how all this is going to work, because there are things I need to explain. And yeah, Destiny is just a beast. Not to mention, there is always the caveats that at any moment Bungie could pull the plug on this thing and this game could just finally die its final death. Not saying that that is going to happen anytime soon. We know at least we're getting one more expansion before we get to that point, but there's a lot about Destiny that's always constantly worrying, and you know, in the whole situation with Bungie as a corporation in general. And I'm not about to make that video where I go over the business practices of Bungie and Destiny and all that stuff. That is a totally different video that I will make at another time. But I'm just saying that this is a game that is complicated to cover, and given that we are doing a Let's Play of it, it's the game that matters. So, just to preface the Let's Play really quickly, I started the original, I started the very first episodes of this Destiny Let's Play back in 2017. My goal was, because Bungie had announced that Destiny was at end of life and they were full steam ahead gearing up for Destiny 2, I decided, all right, this is the time. Let's record the entirety of Destiny 1. I recorded that thing real quick, so fast, in fact, that I was uploading 2 episodes a day every single day for the months leading up to Destiny 2. But we made it all the way through 82 episodes that were uploaded in just a matter of months, and or was it 81? It was 81 episodes, excuse me. 82 was 82nd episode was the first episode of Destiny 2. Recorded all of that stuff and got it all up, and we looked at everything that Destiny 1 had to offer outside of the raids. That was the only thing that I did not cover in that Let's Play, but that was fully comprehensive, it was fully complete, and that portion of the Let's Play is the only part that is still viewable at this exact moment in time, because Destiny 2 ended up becoming a really complicated beast. Now, there are currently 175 episodes within that Let's Plays playlist. Episode 82 through episode 175 all consist of Destiny 2, but all of those episodes are currently unlisted. You cannot look at them unless you have the link. I have not been providing those. They've been delisted for a few years now. On December 3rd, when Destiny 2 comes back, all of those videos are going to be relisted, so you can actually go back and watch them. But I'm going to wait until that exact day, because I'm also going to be releasing a more formal preview video on the same day to sort of usher in the return of the Destiny Let's Play. So it'll be back, but it's going to be a bit complicated. Over the course of the last several years, Destiny has evolved and devolved quite a lot. If you don't remember, back in Destiny 2, or when Destiny 2 first came out, the game was a trash fire. It was hated by the hardcore fan base, and the new players really didn't grasp onto it all that much, and it just sort of ended up being a huge disaster for Bungie. So huge, in fact, that it is what sort of became the catalyst that led to them splitting from Activision once and for all. Because if you don't know, all of Destiny 1 and the initial launch of Destiny 2 were published by Activision with Bungie underneath them. Over the course of the following years, they would end up splitting from Activision and going completely independent, only to a few years later then be acquired by Sony. It's been a bumpy ride along the way, but because of that, there's been a lot of informed changes along the way that we need to discuss. So, Destiny 2 Vanilla and the 2 expansions that came after it, Curse of Osiris and Warmind, were not very popular. A lot of people didn't really like them because that whole period of Destiny fundamentally altered the design of Destiny as a whole, like just what the game was, and it didn't mesh with what a lot of people liked about it. I personally despised it. I couldn't stand what they were doing with the game, and it wasn't until the first yearly expansion, Forsaken, where they finally started to roll back a lot of those changes. They started to undo a lot of their mistakes and make Destiny 2 feel more like the Destiny 1 that players had come from and had grown to love. So Forsaken was sort of the revival, the rebirth, and over the course of that year is when Bungie started to split from Activision, go independent, and then this led into the expansions Shadowkeep and Beyond Light and Witch Queen. And it really wasn't until after that that they started to merge with Sony and things started to change from there. But there were some other hiccups along the way, and these severely affected my Let's Play. So after Destiny 2 Vanilla launched, I hated it, wasn't a fan of it. That was when I kind of dropped the Let's Play. Forsaken started to gear up, and we all knew that Bungie was undoing a lot of people's biggest issues with the game and starting to go back to what made Destiny 1 successful. That was when I went, all right, let's pick this Let's Play back up. So I recorded all of the Destiny 2 campaign, the Curse of Osiris campaign, and the Warmind campaign, and put all those in. Then Forsaken dropped, and I played with it for a while. I had every intention to get around to recording it. I made it through the campaign, and then that's when things got iffy, because with the release of Forsaken, Destiny started to feature seasonal content that would come out every 3 months to keep the game fresh and alive and moving, and so there was always things to do. This seasonal content is basically just a lot of side stories, a lot of stories to world build, flesh out the universe, explain additional things beyond what was always just going on in the main story of the campaign. And this seasonal content was extremely temporary. Once it came out, you could play it for a little while, and then it would go away. Good example of this was, well, Season of the Forge, which was the very first season that was released with Forsaken. A lot of the stuff in that season lasted for many, many months after the fact, years after the fact, in fact. But other stuff, like in Season of Opulence with the Menagerie, which was a very beloved game mode, that stuff went away pretty darn quickly, and players were not allowed to experience it for a very long time. In fact, because I am not a Destiny channel, but I am a Let's Play channel that just happens to like Destiny a lot, I didn't have time to go back and record those things as soon as they were available. It's just not something that's feasible for me to do. So by the time I was finally able to get around to it, a lot of that stuff was gone. On top of everything else, probably the most complicated part of all, was the Destiny Content Vault that Bungie announced before the release of Beyond Light. And this was their excuse. Their excuse was that Destiny as a game was becoming too bloated, too unwieldy, the engine couldn't handle it anymore, PlayStation 4s and Xbox Ones across the world were being set on fire, figuratively, by Destiny's just massiveness, and they couldn't keep up with it anymore. They couldn't keep up with all the bugs and the glitches and the horrible load times and the fact that the game was just kind of falling apart, so they said, look, our solution is to straight up rip things out of the game. Everything that was part of Destiny 2 Vanilla, Curse of Osiris, and Warmind is being taken out. And they were. All of, not every single location, but all of the campaigns were gone, all of the missions were gone, a lot of the weapons and gear were being moved elsewhere, and also multiple locations were gone. I believe they took out Io, Titan, Mercury, and Mars were all stripped from the game. And they would actually repeat this again the following year, leading up to Witch Queen, by removing the Tangled Shore and the Forsaken campaign from the game. Now you see where this gets problematic, because I was in the middle of recording Forsaken when all of this went down, and that made my job even harder. So it's like I'm trying to, at some point, find a way back into this Let's Play, and this game just keeps changing and adding things and removing things. And there's the expansion content and the main game content and the seasonal content and all this stuff that just doesn't stay put. And I cannot, unless I make Destiny a full-time job, unless I make it the only game that I cover on this channel, I can't keep up with that. So I kind of just had to abandon the Let's Play and go, this is never going to work. And that was the moment when I decided to delist all of those videos, at least all of the Destiny 2 videos. I wanted to keep the Destiny 1 videos up because that is a complete game in and of its own right. But Destiny 2, it was getting too unwieldy. It was too hard to keep up with. But now we're back. And now we're back because I really want people to experience this game that have no ability, no monetary ability, nor the ability of time or effort or even the understanding, because Destiny is a very unwieldy game. I really want them to be able to experience it in some way, even vicariously. And I love this game. I really, really love this game. Like, I know a lot of people will sit and say, oh, Destiny's in a bad state, blah, blah, blah. There's, problems here, this and that. As a whole, as a complete product, Destiny is fantastic. Sure, I do have issues with things that are most recently released. There are things that Bungie will, like the most recent thing Bungie has done, a good example of this being the Lightfall expansion, which I really didn't like, is in and of itself bad. But the whole experience, the game in its totality, has stayed good pretty much since Forsaken came out for one reason or another. I have loved it the whole way through, and I want people to be able to experience the best of what it has to offer, which is why this Let's Play is coming back. So, on December 3rd, you guys are going to be getting that preview video, that more formal preview video that explains how this is all going to go down. On that same day, I'm going to be relisting every single one of those Destiny 2 episodes. We are going to be jumping right back into the Forsaken campaign with some caveats that I can't cover everything in that campaign, but we're going to at least cover everything that is still in the game currently, which is the whole, because there was a second location with that campaign known as the Dreaming City. All that stuff is going to get covered from here on out. Then we will be moving into the Shadowkeep campaign, doing all that, moving into the Beyond Light campaign, doing all that, and then moving into Witch Queen, so on and so forth, all the additional expansions. But seasonal content is still a problem, because seasonal content is a lot of story stuff. It's still a lot of happenings in the game, and in fact, in a lot of ways, it's a lot more relevant and a lot more important to the game story, because the expansion content really only lasts, at least for the hardcore players, for the first few months of the year. The seasonal content is what keeps them occupied for the rest of the year. This is to address a major complaint people had back in Destiny 1, where when an expansion dropped, that was kind of it. They got like one more somewhat decent update like in the middle of the year, but it was seriously a 6-month content drought followed by a very small update and then another 6-month content drought before the next expansion came out. This happened twice both with the Taken King and with Rise of Iron. Players really didn't like that, and a lot of people quit the game altogether because of it, and Bungie realized this, so this was their plan. Do the seasonal content. And, I mean, the stuff is great and all, but the fact that it's not permanent, it doesn't stay forever, is what complicates things. So all of the seasonal content that was released with Forsaken, which is Season of the Forge, Season of the Drifter, and Season of Opulence, is going to get a recap video. Just a single recap video, and I'm going to have to use trailer footage and other people's footage because I'm sorry, I just physically cannot go back and record that myself. I'm going to put all that stuff together, make it look nice, and it's just going to be a recap of everything that happened across those 3 seasons. Same with Shadowkeep. Season of the Undying, Season of the Dawn, Season of the Worthy, and Season of Arrivals. Going to put all the footage together, make a recap video. And then this is also going to happen one more time with Beyond Light. Season of the Hunt, Season of the Chosen, Season of the Splicer, and Season of the Lost. Going to get a recap video. After that, finally, with Witch Queen, and all the seasonal content that came out that year, which is Season of the Risen, Season of the Haunted, Season of the Plunder, and Season of, I believe, the Seraph. That is going to be finally the moment where I am caught up and I'm going to be able to actually record all of that stuff in totality. The reason I wasn't able to do this was before was just because it's not just the fact that this stuff's not permanent, but is that Bungie was really wishy-washy with when they would pull this stuff from the game. It wasn't until around 2020 with the release of Beyond Light that Bungie put their foot down, set some actual rules, and made it a lot more sensible for everybody to understand. They said, when an expansion comes out, all of the seasonal content that comes out with it will remain in the game until the next expansion comes out. So when Witch Queen came out, all the stuff that came out that year did not leave the game until Lightfall came out, which meant that in the months leading up to Lightfall, I had plenty of time to record all of that stuff. And I'm going to have the same opportunity post-Lightfall in the months leading up to Final Shape. So now I'm finally caught up. I can actually get a bunch of this stuff done, stay ahead, and make sure that you guys all have a bunch to watch. Now, I did say that in Destiny 1, I did not cover the raids, but in Destiny 2, I will be covering the raids. I actually do have the footage for all of the raids that are currently in the game. I'm going to be making videos on those. They are not going to be released in a timeline-specific manner, however. Like, I'm not going to release the Last Wish raid footage alongside Forsaken. Exactly, just because of the timing of things and that those videos are going to be a little bit complicated in their own right. This is also due to the fact that a lot of the Destiny 1 raids are now in Destiny 2, and trying to retroactively go and add those back in is just going to be awkward and make no sense. Like, a good example is Vault of Glass. Vault of Glass was the very first Destiny raid ever, and it came out back in 2014. Vault of Glass is in Destiny 2, but it is slightly tweaked and different, you know, to make it more updated and more current. And to try and record that now and then go and slap that in episode 30 in the Let's Play, one is just going to be a giant headache for me, but two is going to be incredibly confusing for people who go back and watch that Let's Play. They're going to be like, wait, what the heck? This doesn't look like Destiny 1 at all. What am I looking at here? So those videos will be kind of a bit out of order. I'll just release them when I get to them, but I do promise to cover every single raid that is at least currently in Destiny 2. I just can't cover the ones that have obviously been taken out of Destiny 2, namely the Leviathan raid, Spire of Stars, Eater of Worlds, Scourge of the Past, and Crown of Sorrow. But that is the intention, is to get through every single one of those. At this moment in time, I have something like 18 months to 20 months of footage all recorded and ready to go. More than enough to get me all the way through this year, well into next year, or sorry, I guess all the way through 2024 and well into the year after that. And I still have more Witch Queen stuff to record, as well as all of Lightfall stuff and all of its seasonal stuff to record. And here in, I would say 3 months, but it is very likely that the Final Shape is going to get delayed into summer. But here, when that comes out, I'll have even more of that to do, and even more beyond that, depending on how far Bungie is willing to continue to take this game. Whether or not they're going to just give it up altogether once Marathon comes out and they move on to greener pastures, or they're going to keep Destiny going like they should, given that it's their cash cow, and push it on for multiple more episodes and expansions and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So right now, Destiny's looking like a very long Let's Play. It could be longer, but I am going to put breaks in the middle because I know that that will get very exhausting if it's just nothing but Destiny for a while. So after so many episodes, there will be pauses that make sense, usually at the end of a particular amount of content, but we're going to take a pause, move on to another game here in the middle, and then go back to Destiny after that's done. And I'll be doing that here every once in a while because I can't promise on Destiny ending before 2026 at this rate. And that's a long ways away from now. This is a big game. This is a big Let's Play. But it is also a very important game because it is one of my all-time favorite games, and I have absolutely every intention of showing it to people. And hopefully that, you know, if you were ever interested in Destiny but want nothing to do with the actual game itself, like playing it, paying for it, because I know all of that stuff is extremely daunting and in a lot of ways incredibly prohibitive, hopefully the Let's Play is a nice gateway for you to experience it that way instead. And that's all I have to say. This was pretty much everything that you guys needed to know for this month and next month. Obviously, you guys are still going to get your schedule on time. That's going to go up on November 30th, so you get to see everything that's coming out in December. But I hope you're all looking forward to it, guys. There's a lot to come. I'm not going to have another update for you until probably the middle of January, so just hang tight. Enjoy all of the videos that you guys get until then, and I hope that you all have a fun time with it. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.